Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here. I'm just sitting here drinking my morning coffee. Get sexy while I do it. I thought I would chat with you guys a little bit. This is kind of relevant because I've had a few people say in my blogs, yeah, you ran your higher volume experiment based upon the data, and I wasn't completely happy with it. So I've kind of gone back to stuff I've done with some of my clients. And that's, trying to stay closer to 10 sets per muscle group. Obviously, things like arms, getting just a little more focus. But focusing on quality sets, intensity, progressive overload, making every single set count. And it raises a good point about total sets, because I've observed this as a coach over quite a few years with some of even my advanced lifters, intermediate advanced lifters. Plus, we start looking at the research. And this is why I said a while back when I decided to start doing the 20 sets a week for most muscles for a little while, that I was going to be open-minded about the research, right? And the reason we need to be open-minded with some of this data is because there's so much data going back for 10, 20 years, sometimes by some of the same researchers, showing things like 6 sets a week, 8 sets a week, 10 sets a week produced very, very robust muscle growth. And that's where we need to be clear when we are talking about the high volumes of training. And this is something that came up in that interview with, but that debate. You guys remember the few years back, Lyle McDonald and Mike Israetel had that volume debate over those volume studies. And something Lyle pointed out was the quality of life difference. That if they ended up being even roughly equal, that it was insane to do the high volumes. Okay? If they were so close together in terms of muscle growth that you can't tell them apart, it doesn't make sense, because you're spending double or triple the time training. Now, a lot of people will then say, but I like training. Okay, but it takes time out of your day. It takes recovery resources. You have to recover from all that. You have to spend time doing that. Then the other factor with it that I pointed out with all this a while back, even when I was doing that, you have to factor in the injury side. Have to factor in the injury side. People say, what do you mean? Most weight room injuries are caused by overuse. If you are doing 20 or 30 sets per muscle group per week, your risk of injury go up. Your risk of tendon inflammation go up. Okay? And that's another thing I've pointed out with really high frequency training. There's a reason I don't like people lifting more than 4 days a week. It's the connective tissue side. Tendons get really beat up with those frequencies. Well, if you're trying to do those sort of volumes, unless you're doing 4-hour workouts, you are probably training more than 4 days a week. You may be training 6. There's a lot of programs like that out there. 6-day push-pull legs programs, 20 sets of muscle group. Okay? Sometimes your connective tissue and different structures are not getting any real rest time. Okay? That's not optimal. We need to be clear on when we start talking about doing these sorts of volumes. When you guys go back and look, let's say you take one of the biggest high volume advocates out there, like Schoenfeld, right? Who's pushing this stuff, but you look at a lot of his earlier studies that he was responsible for running, you start seeing that going from these more moderate volumes to the higher volumes, it doesn't produce a huge jump in muscle growth. It's very small. When you go from 1 set to 3 sets a week for an exercise, that was a significant jump, right? That's a significant jump. But going from 3 sets to 5 sets, relatively insignificant. People going beyond 10 sets per muscle group a week. Is it really big jumps in muscle? Sometimes it's barely statistically significant in these studies. And we need to be clear on that. There are also studies, even on advanced lifters, showing with hard exercises, if they're done to failure, are very, very close usually to failure, because that's what they're having to do for the lab, they got bigger and stronger. Okay? And we need to be clear on that. And remember the women's study comparing like squats and hip thrusts and stuff? Those were advanced women. Like, these were women who were all squatting like 100 kilos or more, right? 2 plates aside was I think a pretty good chunk of the people being studied. That's advanced lifters. They had them doing 6 sets of squats a week or 6 sets of hip thrusts a week, right? They all gained muscle and strength. Okay, 6 sets. Remember Schoenfeld's famous row versus curl study? It was like 3 sets of 8 or whatever to failure twice a week or something like that, right? Had one group do curls and the other group do rows, and then compared the bicep growth. Obviously, because rows are not the best back exercise for biceps, because of the angles involved, we know that. Curls are generally going to be superior, right? I would always say compare a weighted chin with that, and I bet you they would have been a lot closer. Not necessarily saying curls aren't the place, because I do curls. I have to do curls. But the muscle growth was extremely robust for the biceps in both groups. Again, those lifters doing 6 sets of curls a week saw a substantial increase in bicep size, because now granted they were noobs, but it doesn't matter. Even then, 6 sets, their biceps increased by like 50% or something ridiculous. It was a significant amount of muscle. Someone's going to go look the study up and call me a liar now. Oh, it was less than that. You were wrong. But it was a lot of muscle growth. And that's what I've observed in clients. Remember some of my voguing clients? You guys remember sometimes with Saif, remember with Isaac, some of these guys. I had phases with these guys where they were doing between 6 and 10 sets per muscle group. They both got bigger and stronger. They trained really hard. They got bigger and stronger, and these were not noob lifters. These were not guys in their first year. I'm going to go out on a limb and say when you got guys who can bench 300 and squat 400, who are getting bigger and stronger on no drugs, doing 6 to 10 sets a week per muscle group, what does that tell you? No, you just got to train hard enough. But that's the take home. I've also seen lifters completely flounder on the lower volumes. Why? They just don't train hard enough. They really don't. They think they're training hard until you make them do some sets to failure with good form, and all of a sudden they gain 6 or 7 or 8 reps over what they had been doing on an exercise with the same weight or with heavier weight. Right? They just weren't training hard enough. And that's a factor. Absolutely a factor. And it's something we have to consider with all this. The lower volumes of training really only work if you are pushing hard. But if you do, it does work. And we've all seen, all of us who've done this long enough have seen guys train that way over the years and make good gains. We've all seen it. I would say the most impressive I've ever seen, I used to watch a guy in the gym. Now granted he was enhanced, but that's irrelevant because so was everyone else around him. This was well over 20 years ago. Older dude, had one of the better physiques I've ever seen in my life. He trained 3 days a week. He trained 3 days a week. And it was literally like a chest and tricep day with shoulders, back and biceps, and a leg day. The dude's workouts were like 40, 45 minutes, 3 days a week. But you'd watch how he trained. He could rep 315 on the incline. He could rep 2 plates on weighted chin-ups. He did high reps with 405. Like he would do like sets of 8 on a high bar squat with 405. You know, he was no slouch, but a perfect example. I don't think that guy did more than 7 or 8 sets a week per muscle, maybe 9. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys next time.